and I'd like to welcome everyone to our session this afternoon. My name is Caroline Twachtman, and I'm going to be helping to moderate today. And this is an alumni session, so it's a little bit more informal. We are hoping to hear some questions from the students in the room to help us with our conversation today. So I do want to mention a few announcements. First of all, the meeting is being recorded, so everyone's aware of that. And just to help with the sound quality and things like that, I'll ask you to keep your microphone muted if you're not speaking. And we'll use the chat section for questions. So as you think of questions, pop them into the chat. I'll be happy to ask them of our panel today. Also, if you would like to share the exploratory pathway that you're in currently or any of the majors you're thinking about in the chat, that might help us with our conversations too. And this will be sort of driven by our questions and discussion. So I think we have one more alumni person that might be waiting to get in. So if he comes in, we'll start introductions again. But each of our panelists has prepared some introductions. So we'll start if Mary Beth, if you would go first and introduce yourself a little bit, and then our other alumni panelists can do so as well. And then we'll start with some questions.
Yeah, so hello everyone. My name is Mary Beth. I recently just graduated from USF this past May with my bachelor's in finance. I had a concentration in corporate finance. I currently work at Citibank as a part of their finance analyst rotation program here in Tampa. And while I'm doing that, I am also pursuing my MBA part-time. So I'm looking to have that done in a couple of years. While I was at USF, I was involved in the USF Ambassadors, Order of the Golden Brahmin. I was in the Honors College as a peer mentor lead, and honors ambassador. I served as an RA as well. So yeah, I guess that's just a little bit about me. Happy to answer any and all questions that y'all had. I also had a major change during my time at USF, so I can speak to that as well.
Okay, cool. I can go ahead and introduce myself as well. So my name is Spunky. I also just recently graduated USF this August. I then relocated to New York. Right now, I am working at JP Morgan and the Corporate Analyst Development Program. It's a 2-year rotational program. Happy to answer any questions about the program. As for my time at USF, I was quite involved as well. I was an international orientation leader. I was in the Honors College. I was in research labs. I did engineering expo. I also switched my major from computer science to finance, but I finished my minor in computer science, so that is also a point of conversation. I feel like there's a lot more involvement at USF I'm forgetting right now, but if you have any questions, happy to go off of that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Punkti, I want to make sure I'm saying your name correctly. Is that right?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, awesome. Well, we have 3 students with us today, so I'm going to kind of start, and then I would love to hear the questions you all have. Can you guys use the little tool here with the raise your hand? Just give me a thumbs up if you're thinking about finance at all, because it looks like both of our panelists are working in finance and have a background in finance, so that'll help us a little bit. Okay, so one of the first questions I wanted to ask is, what's the biggest advice that you can give on finding a major or a career or what you're passionate about while you're a student at USF?
I guess I can start with that one. I would say just to get really involved on campus. Be part of different clubs, different organizations, groups, just get involved. And that's the only way you're only going to find out what you really like, or if that's what you want to do. If you experience different activities or participate in things and realize, okay, I like this, okay, this is not really what I like. So I think the best way is just getting really involved on campus.
I think to also add to that, when you graduate from high school and you go to college, a big topic of conversation is everyone wants to have kind of those hard and super impressive majors. I know I fell victim to that. And I just think one of the best things that you can do for yourself is remind yourself that it is your career and it's your life and it's your job that you're going to have to be in. Everyone's going to have their opinions, and that's great. Definitely take those into consideration if one of them is something you haven't previously considered, but pursue a major that's going to lead to a career that you could see yourself being happy in and working in for the next 30 years.
How did you guys know that, you'd be happy doing finance? That's like a really hard thing to know while you're a student.
Yeah, so for me, my first major was actually biomedical engineering, and I did 2.5 years there before I switched into finance. And I, found out that that was not a field that I was passionate about through my involvement and through different internships that I had there, because kind of what you learn in school, you're not going to see the application of that until you're in the real world experiencing it. And I think that that's really helpful, because obviously you're not going to love every class that you're in. That's just natural. We all have different passions within like our majors that we pursue. And so I think that that definitely helps. I ended up choosing finance because it was really the application of the math aspect of engineering that I was interested in, but I was interested in a different type of math than what is involved in engineering. And I think also for me, I grew up in a household where finance was something that was very often talked about. It was not a taboo topic. And when I took on positions of leadership, they typically were in like a treasurer position. And so I really realized how much of a gap of like financial literacy there was amongst my peers. And that's kind of how I chose that, okay, I want to go into finance, and that's where my passion is. My job has nothing to do with financial literacy, but it's a stepping stone for me to build those connections and to be involved in other options as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you said. I think that I didn't know that I wanted to do finance. I still don't know if that's what I want to do. Yeah, my major doesn't really directly translate into my job. I don't think I'm doing anything like super finance heavy focused. I think a lot of the courses in college are meant to teach you certain skill sets, not necessarily bigger concepts that you will apply later in your job. Like the foundations are important, but a lot of times if you go into corporate, you'll realize that the job description is super niche to a specific role that you're going to be playing. Like even if you think you want to do something applied to finance, your role might not necessarily like use all the courses that you learned in college from. So sometimes it's okay not to know if this is what you like or this is what you want to do for the rest of your life. You can just think about it as this is what I want to do next.
I love the way you put that, because I think you're right that a lot of times you just kind of happen to be in the right place, or you learn about something, or you meet someone. So you have to be kind of open to possibility and opportunities, and thinking about it as just like the one thing that'll get me to my next step, rather than like try to figure out your whole life, is a lot more manageable. That's great. So you guys both mentioned like the importance of the different extracurricular activities or the things you got involved in. Is there anything that you would recommend to students in terms of getting involved, like an internship or research or working with a faculty mentor, leadership positions in student organization? What do you, now that you're working, like what experience do you think helped you prepare?
Okay, I can go. I think that there wasn't a specific experience I think that helped more than another one. I think all of them collectively together, the different skills you learn from each one help as a whole. So I think from like an internship, it was working in an environment where you are in a professional environment. So skills from that. Working as an orientation leader, it was working with people. So knowing how to have meaningful relationships, how to create conversation. So just doing things that interest you and taking transferable skills and applying them in the future. So learning everything you can from different organizations or groups that you join.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that, because I think as I have started in my career now, the most common thing that I hear from managers and mentors and supervisors is that our generation struggles a lot with building and developing those soft skills. And so I think being involved in different areas across the campuses and having kind of an interdisciplinary nature in yourself is something that's really beneficial, because it's great if you're super knowledgeable on like your major and your topic, but if you're not able to translate that and communicate that to other groups of people who maybe don't have the same background as you, it's not going to be as helpful in helping you kind of grow and navigate your career into where you want it to go. So I think just trying different things.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think that you're right that variety can be helpful, and different things at different times can help you develop different types of skills. What is something that really surprised you about your starting your career and getting into a new field or getting the work experience?
I'm laughing because I'm like, it's about how much I realized that I really don't know. Like when you go into it, you think that I learned so much in college, like I'm ready for an entry-level job, and then you walk in and you realize that you know nothing, like compared to people who are experienced or like have been working a while. And I think it's just realizing that it's okay to not know things, and like you're always, and like kind of accepting the fact that you're just going to keep actively learning throughout your career. There's not going to be a point when you know everything. You'll never know everything, but just starting kind of at the beginning and realizing that through college it's hard to like develop those professional skills because you are in a different environment. So learning how to adapt to this new transition when you go into a corporate job, and learning how to behave or like conduct yourself professionally.
I also think learning how to advocate for yourself is something that was a bit of a shock for me, because in college, you kind of become a part of organizations and you get to know the faculty and the advisors through there, and you get to know professional staff around campus. And so it's kind of, I won't say expected, but it's hopeful that these people will be the same people who are advocating for you throughout your time at USF. And when you get to your job, you will, if you're in a rotational program like we are, you will still have people in place to be mentors and to be managers, but you're going to have to ask for things. And that was something that I think kind of took me by surprise the first time, because I went through an adjustment kind of trouble period. And really, my manager didn't know that I was going through this because I didn't take the time to vocalize this to her. And so really like telling them, if you are struggling with something or you don't understand a project that they've given you, saying that, because they're not going to know, because they're not only responsible for you, but they're responsible for every other member on your team. And they also have project of their own that they're doing. So they don't have as much time to really know what's going on in your head.
Just want to remind everybody that's listening, if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. Thanks to Rahi, Dr. I'm not going to say your name right, Dr. Dair Zadeh, for joining us today. She's part of the Major Expo team that put this event together. So you guys are kind of new in your careers. You started your careers during the global pandemic. Have you thought about what your next step might be? I know, Mary Beth, you mentioned working on your MBA. Patki, you also mentioned like thinking about the next thing. You're both in these programs that are sort of preparing you for different opportunities, exposing you to different things. Can you explain a little bit about how the rotation programs work and kind of what you're thinking for yourself?
Yeah, so for me at City, the way my program works is it's going to be a 2-year program, and in that I will do 2 one-year rotations. And kind of the way we go through our rotations is once you've been accepted into the program, then we go through and we do casual interviews with all of the managers who are actively looking for financial analysts. And then through that, we go through a matching program. So it's kind of like if we rank them highly, they rank us highly. Okay, here's your match. This is the team you'll be on. For us, at the end of the 2 years, then we will kind of roll out into what they have deemed as permanent positions, which are at an assistant vice president level. And so really your opportunities are as wide and as open as you want them to be. For me, I decided to start pursuing my MBA so that by the time I finish this program, I will be eligible for vice president roles, as well as if I choose to go into the master's rotational program, I'll have that opportunity so that I can work internationally as well. So that was kind of what led into mine, was the fact that I didn't know exactly where I wanted to be, what my next steps were, and I just wanted to give myself as many opportunities as I could.
I think there's definitely a lot of similarities between the rotational programs. For me, mine is also 2 years, but it is 3 8-month roles instead of 2 1-years. The 3 different rotations are in specific categories. So my first one right now is in data analytics. My second one is going to be in process improvement, and the third one in project management. And after each rotation, you do the same kind of thing, matching to figure out what your next rotation is going to be in that field, but you can pick what team you want to be or what group you want to be part of. For next steps, I haven't thought as far ahead as Mary Beth has. I think I'm just kind of taking it as it goes, learning stuff. Definitely master's is at the back of my head, and international work as well, but nothing like full fleshed out yet.
Awesome. So both of you talked about a moment or an experience that inspired you to change your major. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what instigated the change and how you kind of prepared or reassured yourself that you were making the best decision? I know a lot of times when we're choosing a major, we're uncertain if it's the right thing to do or it's risky to do. Can you talk about what that was like for you?
Sure. So I started off in computer science. My sister was also at USF in computer science, and my dad was in IT. So it was kind of just expected for me to go into CS, and I didn't really have any other passions. So I decided that that's what I wanted to do as well. Not I didn't have any passions, but that's what seemed to be fitting at the moment. And after a while, I participated in different internships that required coding, and I went to hackathons. And throughout those, I had moments when I was doing the work and I realized I'm not really enjoying this, and which is why I think it's super important to do things where you use those skills in a real world setting so you can see, is this something that you want to continue doing? Do you enjoy the work that you're going to be doing that comes with this major? And I realized coding just really wasn't for me. I realized it was a super important skill to have, and I'm glad I learned the problem solving techniques that came with it, which is why I continued to pursue the minor in it. And I had completed enough courses. But I think just the experiences I had of putting what I learned into application and having that moment of realization that this isn't fun for me, I think that's when I really decided that I needed to do something different.
And I think that mine was similar in the fact of, it was natural for me to choose biomedical engineering because I also come from a family of engineers. And in high school, I had the opportunity to do a 2-year thesis that went to publication, and I did it on zoonotic diseases and basically how that impacts humans and kind of the transition of where it goes from animals to humans. And so it was natural for me to kind of, I like doing that. Let me choose my major based off of that. And then when I got in there, it was really the curriculum off the bat. It was not really something that I was interested in, but I was good at it. And so I was like, okay, well, let me just keep doing this. Maybe I just need some of that intern experience to find where within biomedical engineering is my passion. Is it going to be, pre-med? Is it pharmacy? Is it research? Is it more of a public health human element aspect to it, what it is? And I, throughout different internships in those fields, I realized, okay, none of this is really sticking with me. Just because I'm good at something does not mean that this is what I want to do for a career, because we all have things that we're good at, but we're not necessarily interested in them. And so that's really when I started taking on some more of those leadership roles in finance and money positions that I really was okay, this is what I'm passionate about. This is where I want to help. And so that was kind of what made the change. I got really nervous at first when I did it because there is a sense of ego that comes along when you're in the College of Engineering, because they are very hard degrees, and it is very impressive whenever that's what you decide to go into. And so I did get a lot of pushback from my peers and from advisors whenever I did want to make that change. But I had to know this is the first time I'm really going to advocate for me, because like I said, it's my career. It's not yours. It's not my parents. It's not my friends. It's mine. I have to feel fulfilled and satisfied in what I decide to do. And what I'm doing right now does not satisfy me.
Those are great stories. I think you guys both pointed out like the importance of the alignment. Like I think about it like a Venn diagram, like the things you're good at, the things you love, and how do you kind of find the one that's right in the middle. And the hands-on experience sounds like it made the difference for both of you. Being able to practice and do the thing that you were learning helped you decide. I know we got some new people joining us. Really happy to have you. We have Mary Beth and Pankti here with us today. They're both recent graduates working in different rotational programs, which give them an opportunity to get experience some different jobs. They have degrees in finance and had experience changing their majors. So if you think of any questions, feel free to post it in the chat. So we have a question from Amanda. She's asked, after changing your major, did it just feel right? Or did it take some time and getting experience to realize that you made the right decision?
I think personally, it was really hard to tell if this was the right decision, especially because even after it was during COVID that I made the switch. So right after all my classes were virtual, I wasn't really meeting people in the classes either. So it was hard to know. I think I don't know how to answer that fulfillingly because I'm like, I still don't know if it was right or not, but I think that I had already made the switch and I did courses in it and I was like about to graduate, so I didn't really have a choice to switch again. It was like, this is what it is, and everything just kind of fell into place after that. So I think, yeah, I feel like that wasn't a very good answer to if I was able to tell right away, but I think the fact that it was online made it really hard to tell.
Well, and you talked about earlier how you're still not sure, if what you want to do. So it's one of those things where we might never really like have that aha, like the clouds opened up and the sun came out and we know it's the right thing. You just have to be confident when you make that decision. Yes. What about you, Mary Beth?
I think for me, it felt right and it felt wrong in the sense of everything. I switched before COVID. And so for me, it felt right in the sense of I wasn't miserable going to class anymore. I wasn't in a constant state of confusion. I was looking forward to the classes I was doing. I enjoyed the homework assignments. I liked the projects that we were doing. But it felt wrong in the sense of the finance community is very different than the engineering community. And all of my peers had been, in STEM fields. And so switching into finance, it's a very different type of person that you see. And so for me, the fact that I did not represent that was kind of like, ooh, I don't know if this is right for me. But I had made such a big focus for myself on being interdisciplinary that I just didn't, instead of focusing on being heavily involved in the College of Business, which a lot of people do, and there's a lot of opportunities within there, and I think that's great, I really focused on, okay, how can I take the finance skills that I'm learning and apply that across the board? How can I make this a better experience for those in the honors college, for those that are living in on-campus housing, for those in the College of Engineering, for those in, the College of Arts and Sciences? How can I take that and enhance their college experience? And I think that and being excited about those opportunities and writing a thesis on financial literacy and changing curriculums across the board was really how I knew, okay, this was right for me. I'm not sitting in a lab tired of getting, 100% inaccuracies in organic chemistry. This is what I like to do.
Also, to go off of that, I think
go ahead.
You can't tell right away, right? Like after you start, there's definitely going to be a learning curve to a new major, like switching from computer science to finance. Like there was like so much financial jargon that I didn't understand in the beginning. Like it's not that you make the switch and you're going to understand everything about this world right away either. It's definitely going to take some time. Like you have to know that you're making a change. So like be open to like taking in, like it's not going to come right away, right? You're not going to understand everything about that as soon as you go there either. So it definitely could take some time for it to feel right or to feel more adjusted to it.
That's great. You guys give really good examples of how you lived through that. Okay, remember you can post questions in the chat. Something I wanted to ask you both about, you both mentioned like your families being really influential on your career and major decision making. I guess it's a two-part question. So did you have any challenge with like telling your families that you were going to change or do something different? And also, how did you find a mentor, like a faculty mentor or someone in the field outside of your family that kind of helped you?
I think my family was like a mix. I think they were supportive, but at the same time, they didn't really understand why I was doing this or why this was happening. They were like, well, why don't you just major in both, like do both things? And I'm like, hello, I can't do that. That's a lot. I don't want to do that. So I think really explaining to them, and sometimes they still don't understand. Like, sometimes to this day, they will be like, oh, like, why didn't you do that? But at a point, you kind of just have to be like, this is what I did. I made this choice and I stand by it. And hey, like, I think I'm successful in what I'm doing now. So I think that I made the right decision. Sorry, what was the second part of the question?
So the second part is, did you have any mentors or people outside of your family that kind of helped you, maybe a faculty person or somebody that worked in the field or just somebody outside of your family that kind of helped you through the process?
I think definitely advisors are super helpful in understanding the course flow of the different major that you're going into. I think after you're transitioning, I don't know how many people are in the honors college. I think honors advisors are great because they have a specific knowledge about different things and they're kind of advocating for you. But in terms of just general college advisors, I think like moving from the College of Engineering, when you're switching to the other major, you don't want to talk to the College of Engineering advisor about you switching. You want to talk to the finance advisor who's going to try to talk to you about the courses and what you're going to be learning instead of like, your old advisor might not know as much. So I definitely think finding someone who's more knowledgeable about the course you're going into would be beneficial.
I think also for me, my family, I think, knew from the beginning that the major I chose was not the major I was going to stick in because, like I said, it wasn't something I was passionate about. And I have an older sister who studies chemical engineering at that time at the University of Alabama. And reflecting back upon it, hindsight is 2020. You could definitely see the different approaches we had in our major in that she knew like she was good at it, she was passionate about it, she liked the way that things were done. I didn't really like the way things were done. I wasn't super passionate about it. I was just good at it. And so I think when it came time for me to switch, I don't think anyone was necessarily surprised that I did switch. I think they were surprised in the major I took because there was virtually no overlap between finance and biomedical engineering. Luckily enough for me, my dad has degrees in finance in addition to his engineering degrees. So it was kind of through talking with him that I could see the applications of this and that I could have applications outside of just like investment banking and finance. Like they're gonna need finance people at Lockheed Martin, they're gonna need finance people in the oil industry. And so knowing like there are those other opportunities was super helpful for me. In terms of a mentor, my mentor that I have actually has nothing to do with either of those career paths. She works in nonprofits. And so for me, really kind of speaking to her about that was nice because she didn't have a buy-in in either of those fields. Her buy-in was in me and was in like my emotional and personal growth. And so she was really kind of able to say, okay, you don't want to be miserable. You're miserable. What aspect of this makes you happy? Like what makes you excited to get up in the morning and go to class? And so that was really kind of what helped me a lot.
That's great. I think it can be a struggle for a lot of students to have those conversations with their families, or when there's certain expectations, or they've said their whole life they're going to be a doctor or something, and then they kind of get into it and realize it's not a good fit. It can be hard to have those conversations. So I appreciate you guys sharing about your experience with that. Again, from the students listening, let us know if you have any questions. Post in the chat. If you just got in, you can scroll up in the chat to read a little bit about our panelists and their experiences. So I want to ask you guys a little bit about your experience doing your job search, especially like it sounds like during the pandemic with remote classes or remote work. Can you talk a little bit about applying for jobs, looking for jobs, what that experience was like for you?
So I can start. I kind of fell into the position I have right now. I started off when I was a CS major. I was applying on JP Morgan's website for their student programs. I also, side note, I think that's a great way to get into a company that you're looking for. Their student programs are one of the main ways they like acquire talent, and they do those programs for new hires. So I think that's a great, instead of just applying for full-time positions, trying to do something in those programs are a great way to get your foot in the door. So I was applying for a hackathon called Code for Good. And while I was on the page, I also saw another program called Winning Woman for JP Morgan. And it was basically like a philanthropic event that kind of involved just going and like, I actually didn't even know what I was signing up for. It was like the same form that I used to apply for that. So I was like, might as well fill it out while I'm on this application. And then with that, they flew me to Texas for a series of 2 interviews, and mine were more behavioral interview questions, not really technical. And after those 2 rounds of interviews, this was for an internship. So I was selected to have an internship. And then unfortunately that year it became a virtual internship because of COVID. So then it was a 5-week program online. And from the internship, I received a return offer for the 2-year rotational program. So when I think about it, I actually applied for the role I'm in 2019, like 2 years ahead to be here in 2021. So I definitely think that you don't have to know what you're going into, but just start like applying for things. Like, it's never too early to apply for something or to get into something.
Yes, I kind of had a similar experience in that my like big internship that I had my junior year was actually also with JP Morgan. And for me, it was a part of their corporate analyst development program for the summer internships. And I went through that similar process. They flew me to Ohio. We had the technical interviews. And then after the completion of the program, they offered me a full-time role. And I actually accepted it, because there is a sense of comfort that comes along with having a job secured before you even start your senior year. And so I kind of accepted it and knew that it was there for me, but I also knew that I didn't think that this was necessarily the program that I wanted to be in, because those 3 rotations that they put you through were not necessarily aligned with the skills that I wanted to develop and like my long-term goal. And so I accepted it. And then I ended up doing another internship with Citi, actually my senior year, as a part of their Citi Ventures and Citi Studio, which is more of an internship that focuses on interdisciplinary innovation. And so it was really through that they offered me my full-time role, and I ended up accepting with them because I made it clear to them that it was a priority for me to get my MBA done, and that this would be, impacting kind of what my job trajectory would be. And so that was kind of something that I was also vocal about at JP Morgan, but there was not the same type of response given there that there was to Citi. And so it was really kind of that human element that was there at Citi that is really kind of what made me decide, okay, this is where I want to go. Like, this is the environment I want to be in. And I think also when it comes to those job searches, you have to figure out what environment is right for you. And just because it's right for someone else doesn't mean it's necessarily right for you. Just because it's right for you doesn't mean it's necessarily right for someone else. I learned a lot at my JP Morgan internship. It opened a lot of doors for me. It kind of puts you on that tier 1 platform that a lot of those big banks are looking for. I just knew those 3 rotations were not necessarily what I was looking for. I wanted longer term ones that were more specific to like back office finance and my goals of becoming, a controller and a CFO.
Thanks for sharing. It sounds like you both just like happened upon the right things, and it's kind of not too different from that experience of, choosing the major, of like weighing the options, the pros and cons, thinking about your goals, thinking about your skills and what you like to do, what you're good at, and kind of deciding between your options. So in the experience that you've had so far in working, what advice would you give? What's some things that you think students need to do right now in order for them to be competitive, to be, kind of like not necessarily in your program, but as the colleagues you work with or the people ahead of you in the program, like what do you think some things students need to do to be competitive?
I think that's a hard question. I think it really depends from role to role, like what specifications that specific major needs or that job needs. I think for the specific role or program that I'm in, I think things that I previously would have done that would have been super helpful are like trainings in a lot of different technologies or tools. I think Jira, Agile, like things like that. Using Git, I think Tableau. I work a lot with Tableau, so just like showing that you have experience in those things would be super helpful. But I think hiring managers, they kind of know, like they don't expect you to know everything. Just like showing that you took initiative to learn these things, you're willing to continuously learn, things like that, that showcase that you are a learner.
I would agree with that. I think something that kind of stuck with me from the beginning, from those early conversations with my dad, is that the jobs will teach you what you need to know. They expect that you come in with like a certain baseline of understanding and skills that you would get from graduating with that type of degree, but then they're going to teach you like the specialties. So like I work a lot in regulation right now. I couldn't tell you any aspect of what I did before I started. I didn't even know that this was a position. And so I think that's one of the big benefits of the rotation program is that you do get to see those. So I think just having a good foundation, any internships that you can get is going to be very helpful for you. You'll be able to speak on that when it comes to the interviews. Technical skills, they're always looking for technical skills, and those soft skills as well are very important. And being able to confidently, advocate for yourself and speak upon what you've previously done.
Yeah, I think those are really good points that you're right. Like the things you learn in your college classes are not necessarily going to be exactly what you're going to do in your job, and jobs change. And a year ago, 2 years ago, the people who had your positions might have been in a totally different work environment, and you're working from home. So you demonstrating that you can learn and adapt is really important. But that kind of makes me want to ask you again to elaborate a little bit more. If the job can train you, if they can train you and teach you what you need to know to do the job, what experiences do you think students should look for those soft skills? I know you talked about it a little bit earlier, but we have some new people. Maybe you could kind of think about some of your suggestions for how they would build those or demonstrate those skills on their resume or in an interview.
Yeah, so I think a great way you can do that is going to be through leadership opportunities on campus. And whenever you speak about those, speak not about what that position is, giving a position description, but more talk about how you have personally made a change and had an impact on that organization. I think is a great way to show that you are building some of those soft skills. I think if research is something that you're interested in, making it a priority for you to get to some of those conferences and do poster presentations, be on a panel, be a part of sales competitions, whatever that looks like for you in your field, to where you can build some of those public speaking skills and confidence in yourself. I think that that's a great opportunity for you to build those. If technical skills is something more that your field asks of and requires, then I think, going to some of those hackathons or being a part of organizations and clubs on campus that really focus on building those, being a part of research, finding those opportunities for yourself, I think is good, because like we said, you might miss out on some of those things based on how you customize your curriculum for when you graduate that maybe other people receive in other classes. So kind of understanding, okay, finance is something I want to go into and I want to be a part of trading. Maybe I need to get more involved in the securities analysis program, because that's going to teach me how to do the pitch. That's going to teach me how to do stock analysis. That's going to teach me everything I need to know to be successful in there that they're going to expect as a baseline.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, like you said, research, I think even if you're not trying to go into research or looking at research, I think that's a great way to develop a lot of skills of open-ended thinking and just learning how to work in an independent environment. Reach out to professors, see what they're doing, get that hands-on experience. And especially at interviews, an interviewer doesn't really know anything about you. They're going off of your resume. And the things that you write on your resume are going to be those tangible experiences. They're not going to be the courses that you took or what you learned in your courses. They're going to ask you about, okay, what's your experience? What did you do in this internship? What did you do in this research role? How did you contribute? What are things that you learned from this? I know a lot of interview questions, when they ask you, they're going straight off of your resume. So you have to have an experience that you can talk about that shows not only the technical skills, but a lot of the times those soft skills develop from those too, because you get to talk about, in this role, I played a part of the team because we thought through the solution like this together, or things like that.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think about the roles you had when you guys were students, where you're an orientation leader or you're an ambassador, and somebody from Citi or JP Morgan doesn't know what that means. So I'm sure you had to explain like what your leadership role was, what your communication, what your teamwork skills were, and things like that. So it sounds like, again, like the getting a variety of experiences, but also having some really like deep learning where you spend a lot more time, where you do it for longer and you get good experiences, important. I do want to point out to everybody, Michael Stowe, one of the organizers for today's expo, has posted in the chat a link to the survey. So your feedback about today's event is really important and helpful. So before you depart, please take a minute and click on that link. And again, if you have any questions, please post it in the chat. We have a few more minutes to talk with Bhakti and Mary Beth. I want to ask you a little bit about your advice about, it's been a while, but maybe Mary Beth's doing her MBA, so she's still taking classes, but can you remember some of the best resources for you being successful in your classes? What advice would you give to students about kind of the academic side of things?
Yeah, that was definitely a throwback. I haven't thought about classes or like going to class in a long time. I think I remember like while I started, like before COVID and everything, that tutoring definitely helped me, like tutoring in the library. I don't remember the specific name or like what it was, but on the second floor, if you know what I'm talking about, those tutorings definitely helped me. And college specific tutorings, like anytime you have a question, going to office hours and like asking for, it goes back to like advocating for yourself, or like asking when you need something. So asking for the help if you're not understanding something, asking questions, things like that.
Yeah, the Academic Success Center on the second floor of the library. They do academic coaching, so they can help you with anything that you might be struggling with related to your learning and in your studying, memory, stuff like that. They have tutoring for different subjects, and then also the writing studio is there as well to help with writing.
And I think on top of that, I was someone who I definitely fully took advantage of the tutoring in the library, but I was not someone who was comfortable enough or felt confident enough to go to office hours with the professor. I think I did that once in my entire 4 years, and that was simply because it was a requirement in order to stay in the class as a part of syllabus week. You had to introduce yourself and tell them a fun fact about yourself. Other than that, you would never have caught me in office hours. So really what I relied heavily on was like study groups, because I think there's a lot of benefit to not only being able to ask your peers questions, but then your peers asking you questions, because I am a part of the theory that you do not truly understand something until you can teach it to someone else, and then you understand it. So for me, that was great because I was able to have that instant application right there. Okay, if you ask me, how do I explain 5 times 2 is going to be 10? This is how I walk you through it, type of situation. So for me, that was an alternative, because I was never just going to be someone who went to office hours. That was just not in the books for me.
Well, and you guys in both your engineering classes and your finance classes, I'm sure everything builds on each other. So you have to learn it really well, because the next semester you're going to use that knowledge for the next thing, right? My degree is in history, so it's like a little bit of a different thing.
Yeah, it definitely builds on each other. And when you look at the curriculums, it will tell you what you need as prereqs and co-reqs. And that would definitely be something I take into consideration. So like if engineering or STEM is something you're interested in, having a solid understanding of like calculus and biology and chemistry and organic chemistry 1 are going to be very crucial to you being able to succeed in some of those upper levels, because unfortunately they never go away. They just build and build and build and build.
So as we kind of wind down, I have 2 things I wanted to ask you guys to talk about in terms of your advice. We've heard a lot about a lot of your successes. Can you share a story about a time that you failed and how you managed to get over that, or how you recovered from that?
I think it's not necessarily like a specific failure, but I think the feeling of like imposter syndrome, or thinking that like I don't deserve to be here, or I don't know anything, I don't know what I'm doing, like, and I think that continues. Like, I don't think I like recovered from that. I think day to day I sometimes like slip back to that. Like, I like everyone around me here like knows so much, they have so much institutional knowledge, but I feel like I'm not really sure what I'm doing. I'm like guessing, but I think it comes with time, and you kind of realize that no one has it all figured out, and it's okay if you don't know how to do stuff. Like, you're learning, and like the more you realize, like the more you keep working, you're going to realize that there's so much you don't know, like, and you're going to keep encountering things that you don't know, and that's kind of part of it, like, right, like you're going to slowly learn certain things and get better at them, but it's okay not to know everything. And like, you got to where you are for a reason. Like, you're in these courses, like you're at USF for a reason, like you deserve to be there in these things. So I think over time, just accepting that like your efforts and stuff led to where you are, so it's okay to not know everything, and that with time you're going to keep learning and growing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. That's something I've had to come to terms with, is that we don't know everything. And I think every time, you kind of get to 8th grade in middle school, you get to 12th grade in high school, you get to your senior year of college, you kind of have this feeling of, okay, I'm big man on campus, I know what I'm doing. But like, there is going to be someone who knows better, more than you, who's going to be more proficient in what you're doing. And that's totally okay. And I think for me, really a time that like I failed was the first time that I took organic chemistry. I'll never forget when I got my first test back, and when I took it, you had 3 tests, and the first test I got a 28% on, and I am not someone who has ever gotten below a B on a test. And so to get that test back and say, wow, I literally only got slightly better than someone who could have randomly taken this test and like picked multiple choice wise, and I studied for that. It was kind of like a period of, okay, well, I guess I need to completely change what I'm doing because obviously it's not working. And so being able to kind of be like, okay, maybe instead of focusing on more of memorization, which has gotten me this far, I need to practice more on what it looks like of flipping these molecules in my head and drawing them on their own, and kind of doing more so of that and shifting away from what had gotten me thus far, like knowing that wasn't going to work anymore. And I think being able to be adaptable to situations like that is something that I really gained from that failure, because ultimately I was able to get much better test grades after that and was able to pass the test on, or the class on, the first go round, which is, I know, something that's a class that a lot of people who go through it with struggle and unfortunately maybe do fail their first time.
Yeah, that's a perfect story, Mary Beth, and I know it's repeated. It happens all the time. You're not the only one. So yeah, it's really, that can be some of the hardest things, is to have those moments. And like you said, I need to change what I'm doing. I need to figure out how I can do better. And Pankti, your story too about, feeling like you don't belong, and the imposter syndrome of, can I really do this? Or why did they, are they sure they picked the right person for this? I think a lot of us feel like that, especially early on in your first jobs. But I know you guys have both worked really hard, and you deserve every good thing that's coming into your life, and we wish you the best. So as we wrap up our panel today, what's one thing that every USF Bull needs to do before they graduate?
That's a hard question. I think, yeah, I don't even have an answer for that. I think take grad pics. That's my answer. Take really cute grad pics in front of the Bull outside the MSC.
Yeah, I would say specifically something to do is like to pick a sporting event and go to it. I had never gone to a football game until my senior year, and like that was a lot of fun. I come from Louisiana, so like the SEC is something that I was a part of, and like not being a part of that, it was kind of like, oh, this is a different experience, but like I'm glad that I went. And then I think also just like being a USF Bull, take advantage of every opportunity that comes along your way. The worst thing someone can do to you is to say no, and then you just say thank you for the opportunity, and you move on and you find something else.
Awesome. So we have take good pictures with the Bull sculptures, go to a game, some kind of game, and don't say no to opportunities. I think that's a perfect thing to end on. Be open to possibility, ask for help when you need it, and you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have it figured out or know all the answers. I want to thank Mary Beth and Pakti so much for taking the time to visit with our current students today and be on the panel. We appreciate you being honest and open about your experiences and sharing it, and we thank you so very much. I want to remind everybody to please take the survey. You'll see the link in Qualtrics in the chat. Give us your feedback about our event today, and thanks for joining in.
Yeah, thank you so much for hosting this panel. I think this was great for all the students that are there. Like, feel free to connect on LinkedIn or shoot emails if you have any further questions. We'd be happy to answer them, I'm sure.
Yes, same goes for me. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn. Thank you for having me. Happy to talk one-on-one or anything that y'all need.